Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Philip, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright.
Thank you, members. Today, I'm happy to welcome to the Parliament, sitting of Parliament today, with us a woman of excellence, the new High Commissioner for the Federal Republic of Nigeria to Jamaica. Her Excellency, Dr. Maureen Tamuno. She is a businesswoman, an academic, and a former member of Parliament. Hence, we have asked her to join us in the Well of Parliament today. Seated with her also is her very gracious assistant. Ambassador has already demonstrated a commitment to community building, having dedicated her life to the upliftment of women and other vulnerable sectors of the society. Accompanying her also today are two prominent members of the Nigerian community here in Jamaica. And they're joining us, they're sitting in the balcony, and it is Mr. Christopher Okanma, and he is the Managing Director of Total Jamaica, and Dr. Ernest Madu, Chairman and CEO of the Heart Institute of the Caribbean. Many of us, if not most of us, must be aware of the Heart Institute of the Caribbean here in Kingston, which is a very important institution to us here in Jamaica. So, Madam Ambassador, we welcome you and welcome with you the members of your team, particularly Dr. Madu of the Heart Institute and Mr. Christopher Okoma of Total. Welcome. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, at a later stage, I will ask for recommittal of statements by ministers.
Question before the House is that at a later stage, the item, statements by ministers, will be recommitted to the agenda. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. The Constitution, Section 47, 5, Charter of the House of Representatives Resolution 2021 under the Constitution of Jamaica. Ministry Paper number 48 of 2021, an annual report on audited financial statements of the Agro Investment Corporation for the year 2015-2016. Ministry Paper number 49 of 2021, an annual report of the Students' Loan Bureau for the year 2016-2017. Ministry Paper number 50 of 2021, entitled Resolution adopted by the Annual Labour Conference of the International Labour Organization for the year 2021. Ministry Papers number 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55, respectively, and orders and resolutions, respectively, in respect of the law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Denham Town Community Zone social intervention for dated July 16, 2021. The law reforms zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town Community Zone Social Intervention, dated July 16, 2021. The law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the August Town Community Zone Social Intervention, dated July 16, 2021. The law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Mount Salem Community Zone Social Intervention, dated September 1, 2017 to July 15, 2021. And the law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Norwood Community Zone Social Intervention, dated July 16, 2021. And all of those come under the law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures Act 2017. Annual report of the Runaway Bay Water Company Limited for the years 2014-2016 and 2016 to 2017. The Planning Institute of Jamaica Economic and Social Survey of Jamaica 2020. The Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021 and its resolution. The Microcredit License Form of Application Regulations 2021 and its resolution. And the Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 and its resolution.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the Constitution, Section 47(5), Clerk of the House of Representatives, Resolution 2021. Whereas Section 47(2) of the Constitution of Jamaica, hereinafter referred to as the Constitution, constitutes the office of Clerk of the House of Representatives. And whereas subsection 3 of Section 47 of the Constitution provides that, subject to the provisions of subsection 5 of that section, the clerk shall, unless the clerk sooner resigns office, hold office until the clerk attains the age of 65 years or such latter age as may, in any particular case, be prescribed by the commission appointed under subsection 7 of that section. And whereas Section 47(5) of the Constitution provides that the clerk shall be removed from office by the Governor General if, but shall not be so removed unless, the House, by a resolution which has received the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of all the members thereof, has resolved that the clerk ought to be so removed for inability to discharge the functions of the office, whether arising from infirmity of body or mind or any other cause, or for misbehavior. And whereas Section 47(14) of the Constitution provides that where one person is appointed to the offices of Clerk of the Senate and Clerk of the House of Representatives, the provisions of Section 47 shall apply in relation to that person in respect of each such office separately. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Constitution, Section 47(5), Clerk of the House of Representatives, Resolution 2021. 2. The Clerk of the House of Representatives ought to be removed from office for inability to discharge the functions of the office arising from infirmity. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Minister Vaz.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House I'll move the Information Commissioner emoluments and terms and other terms and conditions of service resolution 2021, whereas Section 4 of the Data Protection Act 2020, herein referred to as the Act, established an office to be known as the Information Commissioner, hereafter referred to as the Commissioner, as a body corporate to which the provision of Section 28 of the Interpretation Act applies, and whereas paragraph 1 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act provides that the Governor General shall appoint a person having expertise in the area of information, communication, technology, data protection, or privacy rights, or other like skills, to be the Information Commissioner, by instrument under the broad seal and consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. And whereas paragraph 3 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act provides that the Commissioner shall be entitled to such emoluments and be subject to such other terms and conditions of service as may from time to time be prescribed by or under any law or by a resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas it is desirable that the House of Representatives prescribe the emoluments and the other terms and conditions of the service of the Commissioner, now therefore it be resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the Information Commissioner, emoluments and other terms and conditions of service of the Information Commissioner Resolution 2021. The Information Commissioner shall be paid at the level of a Chief Technical Director, GMG, CTD, and shall be entitled to all allowances attached to that post. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at the later stage that I will move for the suspension with standing orders to be able to take this motion.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that the next meeting of the House will move the following motions. First, the Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Zone Extension Period of Operation Number 4, Order 2021. The Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Zone Extension Period of Operation Number 4, Order 2021 Resolution. Whereas Section 4 of the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides for that the Prime Minister in Council may by order declare any geographical defined area within a single continuous boundary in Jamaica as a zone of special operation for a period not exceeding 60 days if there are reasonable grounds to believe that due to rampant criminality, gang warfare, escalating violence and murder and the threat to the rule of law and public order, it is necessary so to do. And whereas in accordance with that section, the Prime Minister in Council made the Law Reform Zone of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Augustown Zone Order 2020. And whereas in accordance with the section, the Prime Minister in Council made the Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development, Augustown Zone Order 2020. And whereas the order provides that the said zone shall operate for a period of 60 days, and whereas Section 5 of the Act provides that the Prime Minister in Council, after consultation with the Joint Command, may by order, subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the said period of operation for a further such period, each not exceeding 60 days. And whereas on the 19th day of July 2021, the Prime Minister in Council made the Law Reform Zones of Special Operation, special security and community development measures, the August Town Zone, extension of period of operation, number 4, Order 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as a law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the August Town Zone, extension of period of operation, number 4, Order 2021. The law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the August Town Zone, extension of period of operation, number 4, Order 21, is hereby affirmed. The law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, extension of period of operation, number 4, Order 2021. The law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, extension of period, Order number 4, Order 2021 resolution. And whereas Section 4 of the law reform zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, Act 2017, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Prime Minister in Council may by order declare any geographically defined area within a single continuous boundary in Jamaica as a zone of special operations for a period not exceeding 60 days if there are reasonable grounds to believe that due to rampant criminality, gang warfare, escalating violence and murder, and the threat to the rule of law and public order, it is necessary so to do. And whereas in accordance with that section, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, Greenwich Town Zone, Order 2020. And whereas that order provides that the said zone shall operate for a period of 60 days, and whereas Section 5 of the Act provides that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with the Joint Command, may by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the said period for such further periods, each not exceeding 60 days. And whereas on the 19th day of July 2021, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform zone of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town extension period of operation number 4, Order 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the law reform zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, extension period of operation number 4, Order 2021 resolution. The law reform zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, extension period of operation number 4, Order 2021 is hereby affirmed. The law reform zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, extension period of operation number 4, Order 2021. Whereas Section 4 of the law reform zone of special operation, here in special security and community development measures, Act 2017, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Prime Minister in Council may by order declare any geographically defined area within a single continuous boundary in Jamaica as a zone of special operations for a period not exceeding 60 days if there are reasonable grounds to believe that due to rampant criminality, gang warfare, escalating violence and murder, and the threat to the rule of law and public order, it is necessary so to do. And whereas in accordance with that section, the Prime Minister in Council made the law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, declaration of the Denham Town Community Zone, number 2, Order 2017. And whereas that order provides that the said zone shall operate for a period of 60 days, and whereas Section 5 of the Act provides that the Prime Minister in Council, after consultation with the Joint Command, may by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives extend the said period for such further periods, each not exceeding 60 days. And whereas on the 19th day of July 2021, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, extension of period of operation number 4, Order 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, Extension of Period of Operation, number 4, Order 2021, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, Extension of Period of Operation, number 4, Order 2021 is hereby affirmed. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environs in the Parish of St. James, Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order 2021 Resolution. Whereas Section 4 of the Law Reform Zone of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Act 2017, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Prime Minister in Council may by order declare any geographically defined area within a single continuous boundary in Jamaica as a zone of special operations for a period not exceeding 60 days if there are reasonable grounds to believe that due to rampant criminality, gang warfare, escalating violence and murder and the threat to rule of law and order and public order it is necessary so to do. And whereas in accordance with that section, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform, zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environs in the Parish of St. James Zone, Order 2017. And whereas the order provides that the said zone shall operate for a period of 60 days, and whereas Section 5 of the Act provides that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with Joint Command, may by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the said period for such further periods, each not exceeding 60 days. And whereas on the 19th day of July 2021, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform, zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Mount Salem Community Zone, extension of period of operation number 4, Order 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the law reform, zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environment in the Parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation number 4, Order 2021 Resolution. 2. The law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environment in the Parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation number 4, Order 2021 is hereby affirmed. The law reforms zone of special operations, special security and community development measures, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation, Order 2021 Resolution. Whereas Section 4 of the law reforms zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, Act 2017, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Prime Minister in Council may by order declare any geographically defined area within a single continuous boundary in Jamaica as a zone of special operations for a period not exceeding 60 days if there are reasonable grounds to believe that due to rampant criminality, gang warfare, escalating violence and murder and the threat of rule of law and public order it is necessary so to do. And whereas in accordance with that section, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform, zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, Order 2021. And whereas that order provides that the said zone shall operate for a period of 60 days, and whereas Section 5 of the Act provides that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with the Joint Command, may, by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the said period for such further periods, each not exceeding 60 days. And whereas on the 19th day of July 2021, the Prime Minister and Council made the law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation, Order 2021. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Nord community in the parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation 2021 resolution. The law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, the Nord community in the parish of St. James Zone, extension of period of operation, order 2021 is hereby affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the motions. Thank you.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, the question before the House is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, at this time, I'd just like to make brief remarks before I seek the approval. And just to make a reference to Mrs. Heather Cook, CD, who was appointed clerk to the House of Parliament on September 2006. She gave sterling service to the Houses of Parliament and was awarded a CD about 5 years ago. Mrs. Cook was hardworking, diligent, and a very effective person. She did an excellent job during the years she worked in this position. Her work started during the years when she served as deputy clerk. This experience helped her in the tasks she had to perform on a daily basis. She was indeed a very good clerk, and we want to say thanks to her and for her years of service, and we wish her improved health. So, Madam Speaker, with those words, I ask that this motion be approved. Thank you.
Just before you do, Leader, I too, as Speaker, would like to endorse all that has been said by the Leader of House Business, and I do expect that at a later stage we will, in a manner befitting the service that has been given to this Parliament, say farewell to our clerk.
Madam Speaker, the opposition, of course, would want to join with the Leader of Government Business in the sentiments expressed for the tremendous work and the value of the contribution made by the clerk, and we wish her well. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, I just want to join my fellow colleagues in expressing my heartfelt thanks for Mrs. Cook's service. I happen to have been the acting House Leader at the time when she assumed duties as Clerk of the House. And I think we all can say she gave her service with much sincerity and always see herself as contributing to national development. I wish her all the best.
Madam Speaker, I know that there is going to be ample opportunity for us to speak in relation to the former clerk, but myself, having been on both sides with her as the clerk and having regard to this very important legislation that we are called upon to approve, I have to acknowledge in my own way her conscientiousness, her hard working, nature of the fact that she has been committed and dedicated to serve this Parliament. And I want to wholeheartedly endorse the legislation and to wish her well. Thank you.
House Leader.
So, Madam Speaker, at this point, I ask for the approval of this motion.
The question is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favor?
No. You have to vote. Mr. Bartlett. Tracy, please help me count the people who are here. Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown? Dr. Brown-Burke? Dr. Chang? Dr. Charles? Dr. Charles? Dr. Charles? Mr. Charles? Mr. Chin? Mr. Chin? It's absent. Mr. Chuck? Mr. Clark? Dr. Clark? Mr. Cousins? Mrs. Crawford? Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn? Miss Daly? Miss Davis? Mr. Davis? Miss Dr. Dunn? Dr. Dunn? Mr. Golding? Mr. Graham? Miss Grange? Mr. Green? Dr. Guy? Miss Hamilton? Miss Hannah? Mr. Henriquez? Mr. Henry? Mr. Henry?
Members, are you hearing your names?
Mr. Holness? Mrs. Holness? Mr. Hutchinson? Mr. Hilton? Mr. Jackson? Mr. Lawrence? Miss Lee? Mrs. Malawu Fort? Mr. Main? Mr. McKenzie? Mr. Miller? Miss Morrison? Mr. Montague? Mr. Morgan? Mrs. Nita Garvey? Mr. Paulwell? Mr. Phillips? Dr. Phillips? Mr. Robertson? Mr. Robinson? Mr. Samuda? Mr. Shaw? Mr. Sibbles? Mr. Slowly? Miss Smith? Mr. Terry Long? Dr. Tufton? Mrs. Vaz? Mr. Vaz? Mr. Warmington? Dr. Wheatley? Mr. Williams? Mrs. Williams? Mr. Wilson? Mr. Witter? Mr. Wright? Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Members, what's the...
Prosperity and health. Prosperity and health.
Members, the motion has been approved by 48 in favor, and there are 15 absences. Therefore, the motion, as brought by the House Leader, has been approved.
Madam Speaker, at this time I ask you to consider Minister Vaz.
Minister Vaz, I now invite you to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor?
Mr. Speaker.
The motion. Aren't you going to open it? Darrell hasn't even moved the motion.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, but you haven't moved it yet. You move it? Okay. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say something on this motion. And I'd like to urge the government to reconsider what is being proposed for the...
Not yet, member.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
Those against? Minister Vaz. The suspension of the...
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The House of Representatives is being invited to approve by resolution the emoluments and the terms and conditions of services of the Information Commissioner to be appointed pursuant to the Data Protection Act 2020, the Act. Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act makes provisions for the constitution of the Office of the Information Commissioner established by Section 4 of the Act. Paragraph 1.1 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act stipulates that the Governor General shall appoint a person having expertise in the area of information communication technology, data protection, or privacy rights, or other like skills to be the Information Commissioner by instrument under the broad seal after consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. On the matter of the remuneration of the Information Commissioner, paragraph 3.1 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act stipulates that the Commissioner shall be entitled to such emoluments and be subject to such other terms and conditions of service as may from time to time be prescribed by or under any law or by a resolution of the Houses of Representatives. The Act prescribes that the Office of Commissioner or of any staff appointed by the Commissioner shall not be a public office within the meaning of Section 2 of the Constitution of Jamaica, that is, shall not be an office of emolument in the public service. Paragraph 1.3 of Part 1 of the first schedule refers, as there is no law which is currently prescribes the emoluments or the terms and conditions of service of the Information Commissioner, a resolution of the House of Representatives is being sought pursuant to paragraph 3.1 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act. Proposed remuneration and terms and conditions of service of the Information Commissioner. In November 2020, the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology sought and received the recommendation of the Ministry of Finance and Public Service for interim structure comprising 23 posts to establish and operationalize the office. In the interim structure for the office recommended by the Ministry of Finance and Planning, the post of the Information Commissioner has been classified at the Executive Management Group, Chief Technical Director, GMG CTD level. Applying the salary scale commensurate with the post recommended by the Ministry of Finance, it is noted that pursuant to the 27-21 revision of salaries in the public sector, the basic salary for the GMG CTD post level is $5,715,510 to $6,793,945 with a fixed motor vehicle allowance at a rate of $1,697,148. It is noted that Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act prescribes the tenure of the Office of Commissioner and makes provision for pension and gratuities to be paid to the Commissioner. The proposed resolution, which the House is invited to approve, outlines the following. Information Commissioner shall be paid at a level of the Chief Technical Director, GMG CTD, and shall be entitled to all allowances attached to that post. And the Commissioner shall be entitled to 15 working days vacation leave, 14 calendar days sick leave, 5 working days casual leave. Progress to date regarding the operationalization of the Data Protection Act. The process for the appointment of an individual as Information Commissioner has been completed pursuant to paragraph 1.1 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act. The Ministry has written to the Clerk of the House requesting assistance in constituting the Committee of Parliament prescribed by paragraph 4.1 and 4.2 of Part 1 of the first schedule of the Act to determine the remuneration and terms and conditions of service of the officers and staff, to include a Deputy Commissioner, which may be appointed by the Information Commissioner. Paragraph 4.2 prescribes the Committee of Parliament shall consist of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, President of the Senate, person designated by the Prime Minister and leader of government business in the House of Representatives, person designated by the leader of the opposition as leader of opposition business in the House of Representatives, person designated by the leader of the opposition and as leader of opposition business in the Senate, and the minister responsible for finance or nominee. The ministry has engaged the process to facilitate the appointment of the Data Protection Oversight Committee established by paragraph 1.1 of Part 2 of the first schedule of the Act. The Act empowers the minister to make regulations for the purpose of giving effect to the provisions thereof. Additionally, the Act provides specific areas which require prescription by notices and orders either by the minister or the commissioner. The ministry has, with the assistance of a consultant, commenced the preparation of drafting instructions to inform the drafting of the relevant notices, orders, or regulations. The ministry proposed to issue drafting instructions to the Office of the Parliamentary Council with a view to completing the drafting of the relevant notices, orders, or regulations within the 21 to 22 legislative year. Section 1 of the Act provides that the same shall come into operation on a day appointed by the minister, and notes the different days may be appointed in respect of different provisions of the Act. The Act therefore contemplates that several appointment dates can be set. It is also proposed in the first instance to bring into operation the provisions of the Act regarding the office. The first appointed day will be gazetted at the earliest possible time within the second quarter of the financial year. With regard to the timeline for full implementation of the Act, it is noted that Section 76 of the Act provides that data controllers will have 2 years after the gazetting of the first appointed day to ensure compliance with the stipulations of the Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I want to encourage and urge the government to reconsider the emoluments being paid to the Information Commissioner. This is going to be one of the most important and most powerful roles within our government system. This is the person who is going to be the guardian and the protector of the data that will be held in a NID system, for example, and that would investigate where breaches may take place, where government holds individual personal data. Is also the person who would commence investigations into breaches by private companies and may have to recommend fines which might constitute 3%, 4% of the global gross revenues of a company, which may not just be a Jamaican company, but may be an overseas company. It is very important that this person has a level of independence, that they are paid at a level that we can attract the best talent. And I'm proposing that we tie this post not to the CTD, but to the level of a puisne judge, and that it be treated in the same way that the commissioners of, for example, the Electoral Commission are treated, where after the successful completion of a term, the person is eligible for a pension, which would be a full pension if they complete their service. And the reason I said this, Madam Speaker, in Kenya earlier this year, the Information Commissioner commenced an investigation into the ruling political party in Kenya because of a breach of the equivalent of their needs. It is someone who will have to have the independence to take on government, acting on behalf of the citizens, and to take on large private interests. At this level, you're not going to get, one, you're not going to be able to attract the kind of person you want, and the way the structure is set up, the level of independence. This person, if they do their job effectively, probably can't find a job either in the public or private sector when they finish. And they should be able to discharge their responsibility without having to worry about that. I understand the issues of the public purse. But if we don't get this right, we have spent a lot of time on the Data Protection Act, which is very important, is a prerequisite for NIDS. But if we start off bad with the Information Commissioner, who is the guardian of all private data, and data is the most powerful thing right now in the world. The most profitable companies in the world are those who manipulate and exploit data. So I'm urging you, rethink it. Put it at a level of a puisne judge, tie it there, provide the same level of benefits so that when the person is complete their term, they can comfortably, without having to think about where the next job going to come from, they can have their full pension. I urge you, I know you have the numbers, but the reason we went through this process with the Data Protection Act is so that we can have somebody who can protect us and who won't be afraid to stand up to our government, any government that is in breach, or any private company. And you can't do it if you are remunerating the person at the level of a CTD. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, with the permission of my colleague, I would like to respond to the member from Southeast St. Andrew. First of all, member, I oppose the idea of any further attachment or equivalence of a puisne judge. It is something that has happened which, believe me, is creating major problems, because the puisne judges have argued in discussion with the Minister of Finance and myself that puisne judges, they can't engage in any other activity. When they retire at age 70, they can't even continue in their vocation of which they have been trained. And in the circumstances, you have far too many, and I don't want to name them, but posts that the attachment to the puisne judge really is out of whack with the general salary scale generally in the public sector. We had once a member who, having been appointed to a post, was asking that all equivalents of the puisne judge, including library allowance, including traveling abroad, including roaming allowance. All of that should be afforded to him because he was getting the equivalence of a puisne judge. And I mean, to think that we should continue that precedent, it is something which we cannot afford to continue. And indeed, I would urge this Parliament that we must excise, sever the link of any public sector salary to that of a puisne judge. The executive must be separate. Now, I agree with you that the commissioner, the information commissioner, should be properly paid. Don't get me wrong. Right. So the question arises, and this is something which I think permanent secretaries, chief technical director, which I think is about the equivalent of what is being proposed, should be properly paid in the public sector. There's no doubt about that. And I think, members of Parliament, colleagues, when the Minister of Finance restructure the public sector salaries, permanent secretaries, chief technical directors should get salaries probably equivalent to that of a puisne judge, no problem. Whether it will reach there now is another matter. But it is just not right that we have persons in the public sector responsible for thousands of people, permanent secretaries, and the second in command, chief technical director, who are getting salaries 1/5 of what statutory heads are getting. Admittedly, but all I'm saying, member, we hope in the restructuring exercise that the chief technical director to which this salary will be attached will be sufficient and attractive enough that the information commissioner will be happy with that remuneration. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The resolution is seeking to deal with emoluments and terms and other conditions. And as my colleague before me has cited concerns, I don't have a copy before me of the actual legislation and the various schedules. An important aspect of ensuring transparency, ensuring impartiality, is to ensure security of tenure. And Minister, if you could just explain to us what is the proposed timeline per contract for the Information Commissioner, having regard to the precedents that has been established in the public service, such as the Fair Trading Commission, where there's a 7-year contract period that overlaps administration. And I would like the assurance that there will be in this position that level of security of tenure that I think, in addition to the emoluments that should ensure independence, would, I think, enable such a commissioner to exercise his duties, his or her duties, without fear or favor. I think that is an important issue. In addition to, Madam Speaker, the other issues that concern how we deal with the public service. How do we, as a government, incentivize, enable the public service, especially as we move away from pen and paper to recognize the importance of data and the role that the new professionals will be playing to give greater credence to the value of those roles and to reward it accordingly. And as usual, when we come on to these matters, just to remind the Minister of Finance that there are some poor drivers out there that are employed to us, many of them who need to get to retirement stage for them to get a pension. It has been long in coming, and I urge that that matter be dealt with as a matter of urgency. My driver is in his 70s. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support the request of the member from South East St. Andrew that the government reconsider this particular order and the resolution giving effect to it. The reality is that the analogy with an administrative position at the level of a chief technical director, who is typically a number 2 position in a ministry under a permanent secretary, really is an unsound analogy when one is considering this particular position. This is a commissioner, a sole commissioner, who will be operating in the field of data protection, and will also have a particular role in relation to the enforcement of the NIDS legislation, which involves very sensitive personal data, biometric data on the individuals of this country. In relation to the data protection side of it, this commissioner will not only be policing large private sector, large and small private sector concerns and their compliance with the Act in relation to how they manage the data that they have, which affects other people, but indeed the government itself and the public sector as a whole. It is like a quasi-judicial position with the power to recommend fines which are fixed in an unusual way by way of a percentage of gross revenues of the enterprise involved. That can be massive in amount, far greater than any of the fines that we normally see in criminal legislation. This person, therefore, must have security of tenure, both in terms of how they are paid, but the duration of their term of office. And I join with the concern raised by the member for East Kingston and Port Royal, that it should be clarified that the duration of their contracts should be such as to span political administrations. But the point made by the member from South East St. Andrew is sound. I cannot support fixing this very sensitive and critical post by reference to the salary package of a chief technical director in a ministry. That is an inappropriate way of doing it. It should be reconsidered. The Minister of Justice has indicated he's not comfortable with tying it to the salary of a Queenie judge. I don't think the member for South East St. Andrew is wedded to that particular linkage. The point he was making was it ought to be fixed at a level which is commensurate and appropriate for the very substantial responsibilities that this position entails and the risks inherent in doing it well to the individual involved. And I think that is a sound point and is worthy of reflection and consideration. Clearly the government can pass this resolution. It has the overwhelming majority in this House and in the Senate. But I would urge you to reconsider this, because if we approve it today, we are building into the superstructure of the Data Protection Act and indeed the NIDS Act a very flawed mechanism around the critical human resource element which is embodied in this information commissioner. I think that it would be wise to look at and I accept that the judges do not like non-judicial positions being linked to their salaries. I've heard their complaints. I understand where the Minister of Justice is coming from. There are other persons who work in the public sector who enjoy substantial salaries and the protection and independence that assures them, from the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica to the Commissioner of Police. And if one was to think about it, I'm sure one could find a full a gamut of them, or certainly a number of them. This position is as important as any of those, because data is critical in the digital world and the digital economy that the government is pursuing, that the world is following, and which every day becomes more and more intensely embodied in the way in which people do business, buy goods and services, conduct business, communicate, and everything else. That's why the cybercrimes legislation, which was passed in 2015, this most recent iteration, is again being reviewed and is no doubt going to be again substantially amended, because the world is moving at a rapid pace in this area. But this person, this office, this commission is the guardian of the public interest in a critical area. Paying that person at the level of chief technical director cannot be right. I urge Minister Vaz to take some time to look at this again and consult and come up with, I think, a better approach for dealing with this very sensitive and important matter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Thank you for the time, Madam Speaker. The debate on the resolution has encroached upon areas and that require my comment. And indeed, the structure of the post and the level of the post would have been arrived at in consultation with the public service part of the Ministry of Finance and the public service. Now, I fully recognize, Madam Speaker, that compensation in the public sector, in particular in the civil service part of the public sector, at the higher levels of responsibility, is not where we need it to be for us to achieve all of our growth and development objectives. And that is the reason why the government has been engaged over the past several years on a compensation review, which we hope to be at its final stages, as provided we can find a common ground with our partners in the unions. And the idea behind the compensation review is to streamline public sector compensation and to rid it of the inequities that exist currently. And some of those inequities are inform the debate that we're having here today. It is currently the case that the emoluments that are attached to the position of Chief Technical Director are not at the highest level, not as high as they could be or should be. With respect to this position of Information Commissioner, the position lies squarely in the public service. So the first point, which I don't believe the opposition is holding to, but the first point about linking with puny judges, the problem with that we have found is that puny judges are not public servants, first of all. So linking public servant compensation with non-public servant compensation introduces problems. And this has been pointed out time and time again by the independent commission appointed under the Judiciary Act to look into the compensation of puny judges. And every time that conversation comes up every 3 years, and both for puny judges and, of course, members of the judiciary who were formerly resident magistrates, this point is made by them, and the executive arm of government and the legislature needs to pay attention to the points that are made and how it potentially, in a circumvented way, can undermine the independence of the judiciary if we link the compensation of public servants to the compensation of the judiciary. But I don't think that is a central point. The central point is the level of compensation, but I just wanted to clarify that part. Now, so this is a job that lies in the public sector. And in the public sector, the highest level of responsibility, there's no higher responsibility in the administration of the public sector than that of a permanent secretary. That's just a fact. You don't get more responsibility than a permanent secretary. The way in which levels are, not compensation numbers in terms of your salary, but in terms of your grade, jobs are scored using a unified job scoring system that takes into account the level of responsibility, the budget that you are responsible for, the number of people you supervise, your impact on public policy, and other criteria. And measured on those criteria, the only job in the civil service that was deemed higher than this job is a job of a permanent secretary. Now, Madam Speaker, I bemoan the fact that we are here in the Parliament and we can think of somebody being scored at the level of the second highest job rung in the civil service, and we bemoan it as being inadequate. This is the second highest position. The problem is not with the position level that we've assigned, but it is with the remuneration that's attached to that position. And the two issues should be separated. So there's no doubt that the attachment level to the second highest position in the public service is indeed appropriate. Where we do have an issue, and a genuine issue, and I think that is the meat of the matter, is that the remuneration level attached to that position is generally seen by everyone as woefully inadequate. That is a point that we take, a point that we agree with, and it is the foundation of the compensation review, which we hope will have a radical impact on the levels of compensation for persons who bear large responsibility in the public sector, so we can continue to attract and retain the best talent. So once the compensation review is finished, it is quite likely, I don't want to predict, but what the essence of your point, member, that we should be able to attract somebody who would be attracted by the kind of salary that a puisne judge gets. It's quite likely that that will be the case nonetheless. The practice of the past of circumventing the public sector and trying to link public servant jobs with non-public servants is a short-term band-aid. What we are focused on doing is solving the real issue, which is the fact that levels of remuneration at the higher levels of the public sector have been under par for a very long time, and it compromises us all, because these are the leaders of the public service who are responsible for the delivery of public services to all Jamaicans and for public policy, and they ought to be compensated in a way that is consistent with their responsibilities. So I take the essence of your point, but what I'm saying is that once the review is completed, and we are aiming for the review to be completed, any time over, in time for next year, but that depends on many factors. The compensation the Information Commissioner will enjoy, which is linked to the CTD compensation, will likely be at the levels that you are suggesting that you are fundamentally suggesting with the suggestions that you have made.
Madam Speaker, just one point, and I hear the Minister, but I want to say quite clearly, I believe it is flawed to link this position to the level of a CTD. Flawed. And the reason I say that is the CTD and the Permanent Secretary have accountability and administrative responsibilities. This person has the power to investigate. This person has the power to level fines of up to 3% of gross revenues of a global company. If this person can be picked off, and I use that term quite easily, then they're going to be totally ineffective. And the safeguards, needs, and how we protect data will only be there if you have a strong, independent information commissioner. That's the only thing to safeguard against abuse. Only thing to safeguard against private institutions that just run amok of the Data Protection Act. And if you don't get the right person, yes, we're going to tick the box that we have it there and we're going to move on. It won't be effective. Hold on. I heard you, Prime Minister. I'm not just saying greater pay gives you greater. I'm not saying that. But there are two issues. One is the kind of person you can attract, but is also the security of tenure. If you, at the end of this term, this person will probably not be able to find a job in the public sector or the private sector if you do the responsibility effectively. If you do it effectively, you won't be able to find work anywhere else, similar to the difficulties judges face when they retire at the end of the term. And you're going to, the kind of person who would be attracted to this is somebody, and not in the, not at the end of their career. It's not going to be somebody at the end of their career. The kind of person is somebody who would be getting to the senior levels in their career. I just urge reconsideration. I understand the review. I know there's an overall review. I just urge reconsideration.
So just to respond to the member, you know, the notion that someone can be picked off, just be, you know, permanent secretaries and chief technical directors of large ministries have enormous influence on the conduct of public affairs in this country. If, in fact, the level of their compensation subjects them to be picking off, I would say that we are in far more danger from the 17 of them than we are for this position. The point is, remember, that the level of remuneration is not where it needs to be. And I think that you are rooted in the current paradigm. And I agree with you that in the current paradigm, the level of remuneration, if this was to be the level of remuneration for the commissioner going forward indefinitely, I would stand with you. I am trying to communicate to you that we are at the final stages of a compensation review that has as its goal recognizing the huge level of responsibility that the 17 persons who occupy the position of permanent secretary, 17 out of a public service of 100,000, and there might be, if there are 17 permanent secretaries, maybe there are 15 CTDs, or maybe there are 13 or 10 or thereabouts, and the enormous responsibility they bear. Post-compensation review, if we are able to get, and we need to get our point across to our partners, the compensation that they ought to have bears no recognition with what they receive today. And I'm just trying to say that paradigm shift, because you are rooted in this paradigm, you're not able to cross the bridge and see it. But what I'm trying to say to you is that at that level of remuneration that we are envisioning, you will not have the concern about being picked off in the way that you do, i.e. the level of remuneration of judges, which you suggest, is a public number. We know what that is, whatever, 10, 11, whatever, the 9, 10, 11. I'm saying to you, member, that the remuneration of the CTD ought in all, in ideal circumstances, to be such that it would provide the level of comfort that we desire. The point of the matter is that job scoring is not done in Parliament, and job scoring is not done in speeches. Job scoring is a technical exercise where people who have been doing it is an implementation, operational matter. It's not a policy matter that involves a minister. It involves persons who score hundreds of jobs throughout the public sector on an annual basis, and it is internally consistent in terms of level of responsibility, level of budget, level of impact on public policy, level of overall responsibility. And this position is being checked at the second highest level in the public sector. What we need to do, in addition, is to make sure that the remuneration for the post at the second highest level reflects the responsibility of that post. And you have my commitment that that will happen.
That's right. Here, here. Thank you very much, colleague.
Darren, come in.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for their input, and especially that of the Minister of Finance, as had he not given the explanation in relation to the salary scale, I'd have had to tell you that is above my pay grade, no pun intended. On the matter of the tenure that was asked by my colleague from Eastern Kingston, it is 5 years renewable, and that came about in consultations with the Office of the Governor General. I heard the point of 7. If there was to be, it would have to be amended. It would have to be amended, as it states now, 5 years. Secondly, as was well put by the Minister of Finance, I'll just read again for you clause 2.3. On the matter of remuneration of the Information Commissioner, paragraph 3.1 of part 1 of the first schedule act stipulates that the Commissioner shall be entitled to such emoluments and subject to such other terms and conditions of service as may from time to time be prescribed by or under any law or by a resolution of the House of Parliament. And I would further say that in the Ministry of Finance's discussions, they deemed it as temporary. So it comes back to what the Minister of Finance, the amount and the post of CTD. Now, I'll also indicate to you that my colleague here from St. Mary also indicated to me quietly that ministers are 4th in the category in ministries. So when we speak about a CTD, in terms of pay scale, so the CTD is definitively number 2, and I think the point made by the member or the Minister of Finance in relation to it's not the position but more the salary package, which he has already indicated is far advanced under review. So I again thank my colleagues for their input in relation to this, and realize that this is a starting point of a very critical position that is needed in relation to the Data Act, and look forward to your support. And of course, if and when the time comes for us to revisit it, we can do so at the House. So I ask for this to be approved, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question is that the motion, notice of which the Minister gave earlier, be approved. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Divide?
Madam Speaker?
No, if there's a divide, they have a right. It is my considered view that each member of the House has the right under the Constitution to have their vote recorded and the nation know what it is they're saying. So the Minister has said divide. Just let's have the member. Beg your the member. Members. Yes. Members.
Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown is here. Dr. Brown-Burke. Dr. Chang. Dr. Chang. Dr. Charles. Mr. Charles. Mr. Chin. Mr. Chuck. Mr. Clark. Dr. Clark. Mr. Cousins. Ms. Crawford. Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn. Miss Daly? Miss Daly. Miss Davis? Mr. Davis? Dr. Dunn? Mr. Golding? Mr. Graham? What did you say? Excuse me. Mr. Graham? What did you say? Okay. Miss Grange? Mr. Green?
Members.
Dr. Guy? Miss Hamilton? Miss Hannah? Mr. Henriquez? Mr. Henry? Mr. Holness? No. Mrs. Holness? Mr. Hutchinson? Mr. Hilton? Mr. Jackson? Absent. Mr. Lawrence? Miss Lee? Mrs. Mallow Fort? Mr. Main? Mr. Mackenzie? Mr. Miller? Miss Morrison? Mr. Montague? Mr. Morgan? Mrs. Nita Garvey? Mr. Paulwell? Mr. Phillips? Dr. Phillips? Mr. Robertson? Mr. Robinson? Mr. Samuda? Mr. Shaw? Mr. Sibbles? Mr. Slowly? Miss Smith? Mr. Terrelong? Dr. Tufton? Mrs. Vaz? Mr. Vaz? Mr. Warmington? Dr. Wheatley? Mr. Williams? Mrs. Williams? Mr. Wilson? Mr. Witter? Mr. Wright?
Members, the results are 37 ayes, 5 noes, 1 abstention. The motion is carried and approved.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of announcements and notices of motions given orally.
The question before the House is that the item announcements and notices of motion given orally be now recommitted. Those in favor? Aye. Announcements?
Also laid on the table of the House today is a copy of the Information Commissioner Emoluments and Terms of, and Other Conditions of Service Resolution under the Data Protection Act.
Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motions. The first is the Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021 Resolution, which is whereas Section 58 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the regulatory authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations providing for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act. And whereas subsection 3 of section 58 of the Act provides that regulations made under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance, on the 19th day of July 2021, made the Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021. And whereas it is desirable that the Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. The resolution may be cited as the Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021 resolution, and 2. The Microcredit Fees Regulation 2021 is hereby affirmed. The second notice I wish to give, Madam Speaker, is with reference to the Microcredit License Form of Application Regulations 2021 resolution. And it reads as follows. Whereas Section 59 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the regulatory authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make rules for the operation of microcredit institutions, and whereas Section 3 of Section 59 of the Act provides that rules made under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance, on the 19th day of July 2021, made the Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021, and whereas it is desirable that the Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as a Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021 resolution, and 2. The Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021 is hereby affirmed. And the third, Madam Speaker, notice I wish to give is with respect to the Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 resolution. And that is as follows, Madam Speaker. Whereas Section 58 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the regulatory authority may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations providing for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act. And whereas subsection 3 of Section 58 of the Act provides that regulations made under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance, on the 19th day of July 2021, made the Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021. And whereas it is desirable that the Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 resolution, and 2. The Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 is hereby affirmed. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage. No, we're going to do it for tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Madam Speaker.
All right, Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motions.
Go ahead, Madam.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I now ask for the recommittal of statements by ministers.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, there are two statements.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, there are two statements to be made today, one by the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, and another statement Madam Speaker, there will also be a statement made today by the Most Honourable Prime Minister, and at this time, Madam Speaker, we invite the Prime Minister. But just before the Prime Minister makes his statement, Madam Speaker, I would like to ask colleague here to join with me in wishing the Most Honourable Andrew Holness and the Most Honourable Gillette Holness happy anniversary. They celebrate their 24th wedding anniversary.
I too would like to join with the House Leader in wishing the Prime Minister and his wife a happy anniversary, and I'm sure she'll keep smiling if you keep within the time limit of your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. The statement will be a brief statement. Yesterday's case of Nashawn Brown, a promising 4-year-old who was severely beaten by his stepfather, has again brought to the fore the plight of our children as they continue to face physical, sexual, and emotional abuse from the adults in their lives who have a responsibility to provide love, nurture, care, and protection for these, our most vulnerable citizens. Madam Speaker, we continued to be horrified by reports of violent and downright cruel acts being meted out to children. This should not be tolerated. In the same way we have addressed and condemned other forms of violence in this House, we must unequivocally, loudly, and resolutely condemn violence against our children. Madam Speaker, we could not allow this scar on our society to pass without the Parliament condemning it. Reports are that the child complained of not feeling well and was eating slowly when his stepfather became angry and proceeded to beat him with a stick. The suspect is in police custody and has been charged with cruelty to a child, assault occasioning bodily harm, and unlawful wounding in relation to the child's mother. Following the post-mortem report, it will be determined what other charges will be brought against him. Madam Speaker, physical abuse remains one of the main and overt forms of child maltreatment reported to the Child Protection and Family Services Agency and the National Children's Registry. Each year, approximately 25 to 30% of reports received are for children who are victims of some form of physical violence. For the first half of 2021, the National Children's Registry received 1,465 reports of physical abuse, representing 26% of the 5,561 reports of child maltreatment received during the period. Domestic disputes appear to be a significant factor in the physical harm of children, where we have had numerous reports of children being hurt as a result of fights between parents. Increasingly, children and their families are exposed to violence, which can have long-term devastating psychological impacts ranging from acute distress to more chronic emotional difficulties. Studies show that there is a link between adverse childhood experiences through exposure to violence and ill health outcomes. Our children's mental health is also impacted. They become depressed, anxious, and display signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. Madam Speaker, it is important as a nation for us to have a conversation, an open and honest conversation about these other effects of corporal punishment. Children's brains develop the most in the first few years of life, mostly in the early childhood period, 0 to 6 years. When we hug and love and reason with our children, we teach them how to love and care for others. Their brains form the connections for love and care. It is called brain wiring. When we hurt our children, their brains form the connections for aggression and violence. Violence begets violence. Madam Speaker, I've been saying this now for more than a decade. We as a society must ban corporal punishment. Our local research suggests that boys who are severely beaten by their mothers gravitate to a life of crime. If you ask most Jamaicans what concerns them today, they will point to the increasing violence in the society. Jamaica and other Caribbean countries are among those with the highest corporal punishment rates in the world, and we are also among those with the highest homicide rates in the world. If we are to have a society free of violence, we must stop corporal punishment. Nashon suffered the most serious outcome of corporal punishment. He died probably as a result. He's not the first Jamaican child to have suffered this. And there are many other children who suffer burns, broken bones, injuries to their eyes, and severe whipping and beatings. And we have seen videos circulating of this, beating children with machetes. But most of them, Madam Speaker, most of the abuse never come to the wider public attention. It is full time that we stop hurting our children in the name of discipline. Data the world over is showing that corporal punishment is dangerous. We cannot continue to lose our children and do great psychological harm to them in the name that my parents did it to me, and look how it turned out. Madam Speaker, there are many Jamaicans who are suffering as a result of corporal punishment. There is a better way to disciplining our children. Madam Speaker, we cannot continue to build a society on fear. We have to build our society on reason. And it starts with how we reason with our children. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, in communities all across Jamaica, persons are aware when children are being beaten and physically abused, but do not report it. We need our communities to truly be the village that protects our children. We have all the mechanisms for you as adults to report when our children are being hurt to the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. And children, they too can call Safe Spot, which is exclusively for persons under 18 years old. And Safe Spot, you can get them at 888-723-3776 or direct message at Safe Spot Jamaica on Instagram and Snapchat. For WhatsApp, it is 876-439-519. It is an initiative of the Office of the Children's Advocate, the private sector organization of Jamaica, UNICEF, and it is operated by the Office of the Children's Advocate. In its research into causes of violence and mechanisms to prevent violence, the National Council on Violence Prevention has already highlighted corporal punishment as one of the critical preventative factors that we must address as a nation. I expect to receive a preliminary report, but evidence-based report, on recommendations regarding corporal punishment from the National Commission for the Prevention of Violence in a few weeks. Madam Speaker, the CPFSA, whose mandate is to for the care and protection of children at risk, continues to be our first line of defense in the care and protection of children. The agency has been responding immediately to incidents of violence against our children through a first response system which sees social workers visiting with families, providing counseling support, conducting needs assessment, and creating an intervention plan with the hope that conflicts will be resolved in a more amicable manner and our children will be safeguarded. Madam Speaker, you would have seen in the past few weeks abuse of children in state care. We would have seen the rape and sexual molestation of our children, and we would have seen children being injured and abused in domestic disputes and in domestic situations. It speaks negatively, Madam Speaker, about our society when we can have this kind of unabated violence being displayed. Madam Speaker, I am definitely not comfortable with the level of violence in the society. The government, the parliament as a body, we have been taking steps. We passed the sexual harassment bill recently. We're taking greater steps to protect our women. And the domestic violence bill is coming up. The next frontier, Madam Speaker, yes, the next frontier, Madam Speaker, is for the government to move decisively with legislative measures to protect our children. Madam Speaker, violence is a disease. It is a sickness. And it is spread by those who believe that it is the quickest and easiest form of conflict resolution. It is spread by those who believe that it gives them power in intimate partner relations. It gives them power in their community. It gives them power in their family. It is the exercise of physical strength and emotional distress on persons to gain power over them, to gain control. It is a form of enslavement of people. It is a threat to our freedom and our physical and emotional well-being. Jamaica must acknowledge that violence is at crisis level in the society, and we must take the necessary legal measures to end it. We can end this epidemic of violence in Jamaica. So, Madam Speaker, it must be recorded in the Hansard that we were not quiet when Nashon was killed. And this is not something that Jamaica stands for or countenance, regardless of those who continue to hold on to it culturally and otherwise.
Madam Speaker, the event which triggered the Prime Minister's statement is one which all Jamaicans who have care and love in their heart would find horrific, saddening, and symptomatic of a society which has an illness. And the Prime Minister has described violence as a sickness or an illness. I think it's an apt description of it. For a 4-year-old boy to be killed, allegedly because he was eating too slowly, by somebody in his domestic setting, it's really unbelievable. And of course, it's not a unique occurrence. That particular set of facts was unique, but violence against children, violence against women, is all too common, all too close to home, all too prevalent in our society. We see it, we hear about it, we watch it in videos, and it sickens many of us who regard violence as being at the heart of the problems in our society. I think that the process of changing the hearts and minds of the people so that violence, instead of being the immediate impulsive recourse to anger, which is what often triggers violence in this country, but instead a more measured, a more considered, a more strategically sound approach to handling the issue that has caused the anger, requires a re-education of the nation, a reculturalization of the nation. Banning corporal punishment would be a symbolic step, and I think that is a trend worldwide. Within the culture of the country, you know, we, as a deeply Christian country, spare the rod and spoil the child is still believed to be a sound precept in many homes. Many of us have grown up where some minor form of punishment of a physical nature may have been imparted without any obvious lasting damage. I don't know whether banning it in the form of criminalizing it so that parents face criminal sanctions if they slap their child, if that will be well accepted across the nation, I don't know. But I think that more importantly, what is needed is a public education and a general dissemination of a different set of values, a different approach to violence, especially with vulnerable citizens like little children, women who should be nurtured, cared, protected, homeless persons, the most vulnerable people on the street. We've had heinous murders of homeless people. So I think that law has its role, and for us as legislators, it's always the easiest thing to draw for, to kind of generate a feeling that we're achieving something when we pass laws, banning this, banning that. But the reality is that changing behavior takes more than laws. That's why so many of our laws are not enforced and are on the books, sterile, bereft of any real impact. I remember when I was Minister of Justice, bringing legislation to the Parliament to ban flogging and whipping in penal institutions. the cat o' nine tail, the tamarind switch. The reality is that those had in fact largely been abandoned by our judges as a form of punishment because it was considered to be barbaric, inconsistent with modern precepts of civilization. And it harked back to a period in our history which was one of brutality and oppression. So the passing of the legislation really just symbolically brought to an end the legal capacity to do something that was no longer in use anyway, but it was still important to do it. In this instance, we're talking about a very different thing. We're talking about a mode of behavior which is prevalent, which is common, which is the norm. Criminalizing it, I don't think, can be the first step. Or if it is the first step, it must be accompanied by something that will seriously have an impact on changing behavior. And the law is, on its own, when it intrudes into the domestic sphere of parental relations and discipline, is likely to be insufficient and inadequate if it is not supported by other strategies to change behavior. The reality is that violence against children in this country, in the form of parents and other seniors inflicting violence on children, is only one of the horrible risks that children face in Jamaica. It seems just as often serious violence against children is as a result of them being innocent bystanders in the violence being committed by gunmen, marauding gangs or criminals who are carrying out reprisals against their enemies. And children just get caught up in that innocently. They happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. They are not the persons who are being targeted necessarily. But in Jamaica we have an unfortunate culture where even if you are not the person who is the wrongdoer in the eyes of the person who's seeking a reprisal, some association, geographic or otherwise, is sufficient to justify shooting which may bring innocent lives to an end. Whether it be a child like Jaheem Bogle, 9-year-old student at Iris Gelly Primary, just riding his bicycle, parking it for a break, caught up in gunfire between men who have an issue and criminals who have an issue, and losing his life. Or a 7-month-old baby on a bed in a house, and guns are fired, a bullet pierces the wall or the window, hits the baby. Thank God the baby isn't dead, even though shot in the head. She lived. But in many instances, the child doesn't live. So violence against children is not just a creature of parental discipline or quasi-parental discipline. Violence against children is very much part and parcel of violence in Jamaica, where innocent people die all too frequently as a result of the culture of violence which is embedded in our people and the ready access to guns through the corrupt machinations of persons who ought to be brought to book for that. And it is tearing our society apart. So, Madam Speaker, I look forward to further debate on the issue of how we deal with corporal punishment. The Prime Minister has said resolutely that it must be banned. Others on that side have indicated their support for that. I'm keeping an open mind. It is definitely the trend. The international trend is in that direction. But I do feel that if we're going to tackle the problem, merely adjusting the law is only going to be one part of that solution, and it may not be the most important part. The real critical thing is to change the way people think about themselves and about others who are impacted by what they do or don't do. changing their consciousness, getting them to embrace the idea of civility, of tolerance, of care and love, and eschewing violence in all its forms as a way of reacting to annoyance, disrespect, or other causes of anger. I look forward to that debate. I think it's a very important debate, Madam Speaker, and I'm keeping an open mind. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I too want to join with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, and I guess every parliamentarian and Jamaicans on the death of young Nashawn Brown. But in joining, I think that as the Leader of the Opposition stated, and you Prime Minister, that there needs to be a deeper in-depth look on what is causing so much, not only violence against children, but domestic violence overall in our society. As you stated, that Jamaica is ranked high within the Caribbean and Latin America, where violence against children and just women overall, domestic violence is concerned. But I want to bring to the attention of the Prime Minister, and just for us as parliamentarians, as a society, the advent of COVID and the pressure on individuals overall has an effect, an overall effect, especially for those students, those children that have not entered on the face-to-face in school and have been at home for a protracted period of time. That an urgent attempt is made that we get some mental health practitioners in the community or even in the health center, because it is normal for us that if we see our children at home behaving in a particular way, that we contact a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It's not the norm for a certain sector of our society. And as you said, Prime Minister, that a lot of these violence against our children, domestic violence, because in the case of Nashawn's mother, it was reported that the stepfather turned on her and beat her with a metal rod. You imagine what is happening now in some of these households that have not been reported. But COVID, which is something that has come on us, that most Jamaicans are not really coping with mentally, because of the strain of not being able to go out for at least 6 months, a family not being able to, because just remember, Prime Minister, that many of these students that were at home would have turned up to school and even get a meal because of the PATH, being on the PATH program. Even though these parents, the money was sent directly to them, that sum, in most instances, would have been used to pay another bill that they would not have been able to pay. And the strain on that parent to provide for that child, as I've asked the question many a times, how many times you think a household in a community like yours or deep rural Jamaica eats a proper cooked meal for the week? We are privileged in this house. But so I'm just challenging the government to not let us just rise each time that a child dies by violent means or a woman dies by violent means, and we stand up in this house and condemn it. But I think a deeper in-depth look needs to be taken on what is causing domestic violence in this country, in our own country, Jamaica land we love. But also to challenge that we need to, just like when we had the Zika and we had put health aid workers out in the community, we had volunteers going out there. I am sure that many of these students that we haven't even, that did not turn up to school face to face, we can't even find them. They have not registered anywhere at all. So I'm imploring you, Prime Minister, to let us take a look now. Let us not wait until another Nashawn turns up. But let us send some mental health practitioners in the community in trying to deal with the stress and strain of what we are facing as a society, and see if we can mitigate some of these violence within our household towards our children. I support you that a much wider look, even though looking at legislation is only part and parcel of dealing with it. But as parents, I know it pains that each time we have to stand up and condemn the death of another young Jamaican. But let us look more advanced at mental health, because we don't know what drove Nashawn's stepfather to beating him to death. And it would be interesting to find out why. Not that we're condoning what he did, but there needs to be a deeper in-depth look on mental health in our country and seeing if there is more to it than what we are seeing with the naked eyes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just quickly in responding. Madam Speaker, though some of us in here in the House may have medical backgrounds, some may even be psychologists, and some may be sociologists, we all sit here, Madam Speaker, in one profession, and that is we are legislators. And that is our primary role when we sit in this House. Our job is to pass laws. The laws, Madam Speaker, reflect the standard of the society. So it is not a mere or secondary matter. It is a primary response to social issues. And Madam Speaker, in that regard, whilst I accept that the Leader of the Opposition is supportive generally, I would defer on the point of diminishing the value of passing legislation. It is the important role and function of this House. Madam Speaker, the second point I would make is that regardless of how the society views the legislation, as to whether or not the legislation runs counter to the culture or runs opposite to the prevalent view, oftentimes, Madam Speaker, we are called upon to make legislation that runs counter to the prevalent view. We just did that 2 weeks ago when we passed the sexual harassment bill. It is the common view being held that a man should and can make an advance to a woman, whether or not she welcomes it, yes or no. But this House, because of the problems that we are now seeing that this kind of cultural socialization has created in our society, this House has passed legislation that runs counter to the culture, because it is our duty to lead Madam Speaker, I hear the Leader of the Opposition quite clearly saying deeper debate, further debate, which is what I am proposing as well, and which is why we have put in place several commissions to study the problem. I don't want to go ahead too much of what the commissions will reveal, what they will say, but Madam Speaker, I've been dealing with this issue since I was Minister of Education, and I've seen the danger to the society of corporal punishment. We cannot be ambivalent about corporal punishment. Madam Speaker, I take the points that are raised that there are other forms of violence which affect children, but in this instance, it was not a stray bullet. In this instance, it was and probably will be proven to be the actions of an adult that would have contributed to young Deshaun losing his life. Madam Speaker, the society has to be clear, and we have to speak with one voice. All forms of violence must be repudiated. So, Madam Speaker, it's not my intention to have a debate today, and I appreciate the comments and the positions made. There will be a forum, there will be a time and opportunity when we will have further and deeper exploration of these issues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, we now move back to the ayes. Those against, the ayes. Public business.
Madam Speaker, it is now proposed to open the matter of the reports of the Joint Select Committee on the National Identification and Registration Act. The report was tabled a couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, Madam Speaker, and at the end of the approval, hopefully, of this debate and adoption of the report, we're hoping to withdraw the existing bill and to, on behalf of the Prime Minister, table a new bill, the NIDS Bill 2021, which would then be debated at the beginning of next term. In addition, Madam Speaker, we have circulated, or the NIDS Secretariat has circulated to the members of the Joint Select Committee, but will make it available to the public and other parliamentarians at large, a draft regulation. Now, we could not table a draft regulation in the House, Madam Speaker. We table final regulations. But when we were debating the bill, Madam Speaker, we observed that a number of matters could be put to regulations. And therefore, the Joint Select Committee said before they actually pass the new bill or recommend the passing, they would like to see what is in the proposed regulations. So that draft regulation, Madam Speaker, have been made to the members of the Joint Select Committee, will be made, as I said, to the public. It will be available at the NIDS Secretariat, and their website number is NIDSFACT, NIDSFACT, NIDSFACT.com. And so it will be advertised, Madam Speaker, so members of the public and anyone can view not only the 2021 bill, but also the draft regulations. Madam Speaker, if I might say, in coming to report to you on the Joint Select Committee report, I was very happy that the Prime Minister asked me to chair the report, and a number of features emerged during our deliberations. Happy to report, Madam Speaker, that we had 31 meetings, which meant that we went through thoroughly, on a regular basis, a number of items. We were able to invite and attract over 100 contributors. And we not only put the matrix and dealt with all the contributions, but after that, Madam Speaker, we had several morning sessions where the committee was able to go through clause by clause the matrix to ensure that we have a bill that would be acceptable to the Parliament and to Jamaica. One or two interesting features will emerge, Madam Speaker, that we want every individual in Jamaica to have a national identification number that is unique. And a number of contributors initially recommended that we use the TRN. I must admit, Madam Speaker, we did not accept it at first. But after further consideration, Madam Speaker, and in discussion with the tax administration and also with the Prime Minister and the NIDS team, we have agreed, it has already been announced, that we would be using the tax administration number as the national identification number. And that is important, Madam Speaker, Because if we use a different format or a different number or a different set of numbering, using 9 numbers, you could well have a situation where 2 persons in Jamaica have the same number, one a TRN and one a NIN. Mathematically, that would be possible. So to avoid that, Madam Speaker, we have agreed to use the tax TRN number as the NIN number, which in itself, Madam Speaker, is unique. And what we were able to gather from the tax authorities is that the issuing of the TRN is unique in itself, and it cannot be duplicated or will not be duplicated. It is random. And so, Madam Speaker, persons who now have a TRN will, when they register under the NIN, will get a national identification number exactly the same as they have of a TRN. In addition, Madam Speaker, in discussion with the opposition members and the Prime Minister and with the Electoral Commission, they have kindly agreed to be the oversight body. So they are already a commission of Parliament, so they will be the oversight body that will examine and ensure that the data is properly collected, the authority perform according to the Act, and definitely will use their experience to make sure that the authority is properly managed and execute their functions effectively. And you will see, Madam Speaker, as I go through in this report, that we decided to strengthen the governance structure of the NIRA, that's the National Identification and Registration Act. So, Madam Speaker, may I say that on December the 15th, 2020, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, tabled in Parliament the bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2020. In tabling the bill, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated that this proposed new legislation would go before a joint select committee of Parliament comprising of both houses for intense review and consideration. On December the 18th, 2020, the joint select committee first met and created a meeting schedule with the first official meeting on January the 5th, 2021. Madam Speaker, as a part of the thrust to have the public informed and engaged about the new NIR bill, all meetings were broadcast live. The committee agreed to the holding of 6 virtual town hall meetings across various media outlets, including social media, in order to reach and educate a high-level density of the population on the proposed legislative framework. Madam Speaker, deadline was first put as January the 29th, 2021, but later we extended it to February the 15th, 2021. As I indicated, Madam Speaker, over 100, to be exact, 102 contributions came in from organizations and members of the public. Madam Speaker, these individuals, groups, organizations and entities began their submissions on February 11th, 2021. On May 11th, 2021, the committee commenced the clause-by-clause review of the bill after hearing and interrogating all the submissions. The Joint Select Committee, Madam Speaker, held its final meeting on June 30th, 2021. I am happy, Madam Speaker, that we have now completed and tabled a comprehensive report that is reflective of the policy as well as the important input from the general public, stakeholder groups, associations, and so on. So, Madam Speaker, this is the report which was tabled 2 weeks ago. And it has not only a 20-page report, but also the suggested amendments to the existing bill. Madam Speaker, the report highlights various observations and suggestions made by the public. Your committee, Madam Speaker, considered these submissions and have made several recommendations for amendments to the NIR Bill 2020. These amendments, Madam Speaker, will serve to strengthen the proposed legislative regime. And the recommendations, Madam Speaker, I will group under 4 broad headings. to recognize and protect the right to privacy of an enrolled individual, particularly as it relates to the protection of an individual's data and identity information. Secondly, Madam Speaker, to strengthen the organizational and governance structure of the authority. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, to strengthen the independent oversight of the authority. Fourthly, our discussion on the penalties, varying many of the penalties. And finally, Madam Speaker, to look at the eligibility of persons to the NERA. Madam Speaker, the right to privacy and the security of identity information from identity theft and identity fraud were recurrent themes during the submissions and deliberations of the committee. It is important to note that the bill currently reflects a strong core of security measures and requirements so that from a security standpoint, identity information will be protected. The committee, Madam Speaker, does not recommend any major changes to that overall framework. However, Madam Speaker, the committee suggests the following amendments so that the bill possesses a strong legal framework to ensure that the constitutional right to privacy is acknowledged and protected. Firstly, Madam Speaker, it is clear from a reading of the current bill that the authority must observe and comply with the Data Protection Act in order to fulfill its functions. There were many submissions, Madam Speaker, which suggested that the authority should not be operationalized until after the Data Protection Act has been put in force. And Madam Speaker, this was accepted. So, Madam Speaker, we heard from the Minister Vaz that the Data Protection Act is about to be operationalized. Until it is operationalized, Madam Speaker, the NIDS bill will not come into operation. But moreover, Madam Speaker, under the present Data Protection Act, they have a 2-year moratorium before they start to examine data collected. We are asking for change to the Data Protection Act for that moratorium to be waived with respect to the National Identification and Registration Act. So what this means, Madam Speaker, is that the moratorium will be waived, and therefore the data protection, the information controller will be immediately allowed to examine what is happening when the NIDS bill comes into operation. So, Madam Speaker, your committee, noting that the authority will be in a unique position of great responsibility, recommends that the Data Protection Act be amended to exclude the authority from that moratorium. This would mean, Madam Speaker, that the authority would be held to a high level of accountability and transparency from day one of its operation. So you see, Madam Speaker, this bill, even if it is passed in September of this year, it will not come into operation until the Data Protection Act is in operation. And once the Data Protection Act is in operation, then the bill, the NERA, will come into operation thereafter, because it will be subject to all the terms of the Data Protection Act. Second, Madam Speaker, specific provision was also made to ensure that enrollees make an informed decision upon application to become enrolled in the system. The committee therefore recommends that upon enrollment, the applicant be advised that in line with the Data Protection Act and the disclosure provisions under this Act and Jamaican law, the authority is mandated to retain minimal identity information. This, Madam Speaker, is to guard against identity theft and fraud, and indeed to protect the identity information of the previously enrolled individual. What this means, Madam Speaker, this is a voluntary bill, and the person can ask to resign or ask to withdraw from the enrollment. But in withdrawing, Madam Speaker, the enrollee also has a right to register again. But if there's no information available, Madam Speaker, that enrollee could enroll a second and a third time in a different name, with a different, and getting a different NIN, and that, Madam Speaker, would be committing fraud. And therefore, to avoid that, from the very first enrollment, the information collected, if the enrollee decides to cancel his or her enrollment, he will agree that a minimum amount of information will be retained in the event that he or she should re-enroll. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, a major basis for this bill is the facilitation of ease of doing business and access to the formal financial system. The authority will essentially be undertaking the vetting of the third party by working with an enrolled individual to provide modes of presenting proof of unique identification. The authority will then be able to act in support of that enrolled individual and authenticate this proof of unique identity and verify that this person is indeed who he says he or she is. The committee received several submissions, Madam Speaker, regarding the amount of data which is to be collected or enrolled. But just to emphasize, members of the House, there are third parties, especially financial institutions, where the member will, a citizen, will come with a card and say, I am John Brown. That institution will be able to verify with the NIDS authority whether in fact this card is not only authentic, but the information collected can be verified, which would give the institution the trust and confidence to deal with that individual. So, Madam Speaker, a certain amount of information was collected. And it is important to note, Madam Speaker, that some of these submissions recommended the collection of even more identity information. The committee, having thoroughly examined this issue, and agree that the identity information outlined in the bill strikes the right balance of the least amount of identity information which may be collected in order to satisfy the intended result. Madam Speaker, your committee recommends that the bill clearly outline the data set which will be sufficient to establish the unique identity of an individual, but notes that the more attributes assigned to an individual, the stronger the basis for the unique identity which is established. Madam Speaker, the verification services will result in some level not only of identification, but disclosure of identity information by the authority. And the committee recommends that it be made absolutely clear in the bill that fingerprints will never be disclosed by the authority in order to verify the identity of an enrolled individual. Madam Speaker, under existing Jamaican law, the right to privacy is tempered in certain circumstances. The authority must never disclose the identity information of an enrolled individual except in very limited circumstances. The bill, for example, Madam Speaker, outlines, similar to the Data Protection Act, the circumstances in which disclosure may be mandated without the consent of the enrolled individual. And that is one simple example, probably the only example, Madam Speaker, where the Commissioner of Police may obtain a court order to receive identity information but must satisfy the requirements set out in the bill. The committee recommends that the provisions be strengthened by clearly outlining that the judge must be satisfied of the measures to be taken to protect, treat and store the identity information. The committee also recommends, Madam Speaker, that the time for retention of that information without charge not exceed 3 years in the first instance, and that any application for an extension of time to retain the identity information must be made in the presence of the enrolled individual. Your committee also notes, Madam Speaker, that the power to search and seize identity information is an area where the rights of the individual must be protected. Your committee recommends that the type of warrants to be utilized by the constabulary be prescribed and provide clear directions as it relates to the treatment of items which may be subject to legal professional privilege. Your committee recommends that there be a clear provision in the bill against the copying of items which could be subject to legal professional privilege. Next, Madam Speaker, the committee sought to strengthen the organizational and governance structure of the authority. Madam Speaker, the committee recognizes that a great level of care and consideration is necessary in the creation of this institution. This entity must be responsible, responsive, transparent, and efficient. The committee, therefore, Madam Speaker, reviewed the proposed governance structure in the bill and made the following conclusions. Firstly, that the roles and responsibilities of the authority, the proposed board of management, and the chief executive officer were not clear and needed to be recast. Secondly, Madam Speaker, that the board of management was too top-heavy and needed to be reduced. And thirdly, that the proposed model of governance would not result in the type of entity required to administer the national identification system. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the committee recommends the following changes, which are outlined in great detail in the amendments which are attached to the report. These amendments would be to clauses 5, 6 and the first schedule, and would state as follows: that A, the authority remain a body corporate, but that the board of management be removed from the governance structure. B, the authority comprise a 9-member team reduced from the 15-member board of management to strategically lead the authority in the fulfillment of its functions. C, the 9-member team would comprise persons with the necessary qualifications, expertise, and knowledge, as well as representatives from the government and important stakeholder groups of the wider society. Madam Speaker, these persons will be chosen from nominees from the ministry to which the authority is assigned and the ministry which is responsible for national security. Nominees, at least 2 from the Jamaica umbrella of churches. Nominees, at least 3 from the private sector organization of Jamaica. These nominees, Madam Speaker, of which 1 will be chosen by the Governor-General. A Custos of Jamaica, nominated by the Governor-General. Nominees with expertise in the following areas: information and communication technology and cybersecurity with at least 7 years' experience. Financial management and accounting with at least 7 years' experience. Human resource management and public administration with at least 7 years' experience. An attorney at law of at least 15 years standing and being a member of the Jamaica Bar Association. The functions of the authority, Madam Speaker, clearly outline roles, responsibilities, powers, and accountability, and the relationship between the authority and the oversight body. Madam Speaker, to ensure that the requisite attention is given, your committee recommends that there should be at least several standing committees of the authority: Human Rights and Law Committee, Enterprise Risk Management Committee, Information System and Cyber Security Committee, the Information Communication Technology Committee, the Human Resources Development Committee, the Financial Management Committee, and the 7th committee, the Audit Committee. Madam Speaker, similar to the committees of this Honourable House, much of the detailed work of the authority would be carried out at the committee level. The day-to-day management of the authority would be undertaken by an executive director who would carry out the instructions of the authority, and any functions under the Act be responsible to the authority and be evaluated by the authority. The proposed amendments, Madam Speaker, clearly outline the reporting responsibilities of the executive director to the authority, and removes the uncertainty as to the interaction between the oversight body and the executive director. Madam Speaker, your committee sought to strengthen the independent oversight of the authority, and therefore recommended the strengthening mechanism in the bill by establishing the oversight body as a commission of Parliament. Commissions of Parliament, as we know, Madam Speaker, report directly to the Parliament and may conduct their affairs in a very independent manner. This level of oversight would be appropriate to the special nature of this NERA. Your committee also recommends, Madam Speaker, that the task be undertaken by the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. And I am happy to report, Madam Speaker, that in discussions with the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, they are happy to do the work. And I have no doubt, Madam Speaker, that the Electoral Commission possesses the wealth of experience and knowledge to treat with identity information, and their knowledge and expertise will ensure that the trust and confidence that will be needed for the NERA will be upheld and will be respected by the Jamaican public. Madam Speaker, in relation to penalties, the various contributions examine that some of the penalties should be increased, some should be reduced, and also, Madam Speaker, that we should avoid criminalizing persons who seek to apply to the NERA. So, Madam Speaker, after much consideration, your committee recommended the offence framework be amended to reduce the risk of unnecessarily criminalizing applicants and enrolled individuals. Secondly, increase or decrease penalties where necessary. Thirdly, enable an offence to be tried in the parish court and/or circuit court. The committee recommends that a breach of the duty to maintain secrecy and confidentiality be triable both in the parish and circuit court. The penalty of the parish court was increased to a maximum fine of $3 million or up to 3 years imprisonment or both. At the circuit court level, in keeping with the Data Protection Act, breach of the duty may result in up to 10 years imprisonment or fine or both imprisonment and fine. Finally, Madam Speaker, I wish to highlight the recommendation that the bill clearly indicate that all Jamaican citizens are eligible to enroll in the system. Secondly, the bill clearly indicates that only those legally resident in Jamaica may enroll in the system. And thirdly, Madam Speaker, the authority be provided with timely information in order that only those eligible to enroll are in fact enrolled in the system. Madam Speaker, you will note that this thorough examination and consideration of the bill, submission received and recommendations resulted in extensive amendments. These proposed amendments, Madam Speaker, are appended to the report by insertions in the tabled bill for ease of reference. Madam Speaker, your committee at this time also make the recommendation that the bill be withdrawn and a new bill incorporating the suggested amendments be tabled almost simultaneously. Madam Speaker, as chairman of the committee, I want to recognize all those who participated in this process. Allow me to recognize and thank not only the parliamentary team, the members of government and opposition of both houses, the NIDS technical team, the director of the Legal Reform Department, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Solicitor General and our team at the Attorney General's chambers, the media, and most importantly, Madam Speaker, the public who would have participated through numerous submissions. Madam Speaker, I want to thank all of them who participated. So, Madam Speaker, I hereby now commend the report of the Joint Select Committee tasked with reviewing the bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2020 to this Honourable House for consideration and approval. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I intend to make my substantive contribution after the recess, but the only comment I want to make is a comment on process. And I'm sure, and I want to commend the Justice Minister who chaired the Joint Select Committee for his efficiency, for ensuring that all views contended, and for managing the process in an expeditious way. The issue of process in the development of legislation is as important as the legislation itself. And from what the Minister reported, we have benefited from the input of a wide cross-section of stakeholders. We have had an opportunity as a committee to examine the recommendations that have been made, and the bill that is being presented here is far richer, far better, because of the Joint Select Committee process. And I'm simply making the point, we could have had a NIDSR, yes, I know, I'm going back to it, long ago. Yes, if we had simply subjected it to this process and a bill that would have been far better, that we didn't have to go to court about. So I commend, and you should thank me for doing it, because we have a better bill now. But I want to commend the Minister again and to say, as we consider legislation, process is as important as the legislation itself. Thank you.
No, I have to make Madam Speaker, the House will recall that in December 2020, I tabled the National Identification and Registration Act 2020. The House was also informed that a joint select committee would be set up for consideration and deliberation of the bill. Madam Speaker, that process ran close to 7 months, with public engagement intensifying since January 2021. I am pleased that the public responded to the calls for submission. We had over 100 submissions from various public and private institutions, groups, organizations, and individuals. Of the 100 submissions received, more than 30 individuals were asked to appear before the committee to present their submissions. Madam Speaker, this added value to the final report that was tabled in the Honourable House. I want to thank the Chairman of the Joint Select Committee, the Honourable Delroy Chuck, QC, for ably overseeing the Joint Select Committee process. I also want to recognize and thank the parliamentary team, members of the government and opposition of both houses, the NIDS technical team, the Director of the Legal Reform Department, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Solicitor General and her team at the Attorney General's Chambers, the Jamaica Information Service, the PBCJ, the media, and most importantly, the public who would have participated through their submissions. In April 2019, Madam Speaker, the Constitutional Courts highlighted deficiencies in the previous 2017 Act. These have been fully addressed in the new National Identification and Registration Bill 2021. The bill incorporates various inputs arising out of the Joint Select Committee process. The committee made several recommendations that have served to shape the legislation into a more widely accepted, fit for purpose, and overall better legislation to underpin the governance and oversight of the national identification system. Madam Speaker, the new NIDS is voluntary. All Jamaican citizens or persons ordinarily resident in Jamaica will have the opportunity to voluntarily enroll for a national identification card, protected by several safeguards. We are aware of the concerns about the right to privacy and the security of identity information, and as such, the bill reflects a strong core of security measures and requirements so that identity information will be respected and protected. The new bill has at its core the recognition of an individual's right to privacy and the protection of that right related to that individual's data identity information. It is proposed that the NIDS will be managed by the National Identification and Registration Authority, NIRA. The new bill introduces provisions that serve to strengthen the proposed authority by clearly outlining the governance structure and functions of the authority. Madam Speaker, the accountability and transparency features of the NIDS have been strengthened. This new bill seeks to establish the independent oversight body as a Commission of Parliament to ensure that the authority is compliant with the National Identification and Registration Act. As a Commission of Parliament, the oversight body will be autonomous in carrying out its functions and will only answer to Parliament. In addition to providing for a voluntary enrolment process into the NIDS and the establishment of an authority to manage the operations of the NIDS, The new bill will also provide for, one, a stronger independent oversight body to monitor the authority and report its findings to Parliament, the collection of only minimum identity information, greater data protection and security mechanisms, and 4, a more appropriate offence regime with penalties that reflect the gravity of breaches of the legislation. Madam Speaker, these are only a few elements of the new bill which has been tabled, and these which will be explored in greater details. The government is aware of the need to continue to educate Jamaicans about the proposed legislation. Over the next couple of months, the NIDS Project Executing Unit will be embarking on a series of sessions to explain the legislation and educate Jamaicans about the NIDS and its benefits. Let me remind the public that they can also learn more about the NIDS and its identity by logging on to nidsfacts.com. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased that the new bill reflecting the input of several submissions will now be tabled and is ready to be debated. There is a lot to be gained from implementing a national identification system, and at the end of this process, we know, Madam Speaker, we would have secured major improvements for the delivery of service to our population. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the critical importance of the government being able to identify our citizens in order to serve them better. Madam Speaker, the legislation having been redrafted to incorporate the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee, I am pleased to begin the debate on the bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2020. And Madam Speaker, the Minister of Justice will table, as I said earlier, the new bill on my behalf and will lead the debate on the new bill. I'm hoping that we can debate and conclude it after our parliamentary recess. And Madam Speaker, just as a quick response to my friend opposite, Madam Speaker, there are lessons to be learned in life. And I indeed, Madam Speaker, would have learned my lesson well. The original intention was that this bill would have had to go to a Joint Select Committee. But as the story has been told many times before, that we believed we had crossed the floor understanding and cooperation to pass the bill, because having had this bill for almost 40 years in different forms and no action being taken, I came to this House with a sense of urgency to get it done. As it turned out, Madam Speaker, there was deficiency in the bill. We don't debate that. But there was also political opportunity, and the political opportunity was taken. And that is just the reality. That is how politics is. The point is, Madam Speaker, that we have gone through that process. We have learned our lesson as it relates to these kinds of political understandings. And I think what is best is that we go through the process. Even if it is urgent, even if it is something that makes sense, it always benefits the process to have several minds and all perspectives come to contend on what it is that should be the outcome. And I believe, Madam Speaker, we have presented to Parliament a bill that is robust, that meets all the concerns, that assures the country, and at the same time will ensure that Jamaica can move very quickly to become a digital society and a more inclusive society by government being able to properly identify its citizens. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Prime Minister and the member from South East St. Andrew and now ask the House to approve the bill.
Members, the
report, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is that the report be now approved. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The report is approved.
Madam Speaker, this Honourable House would have seen numerous amendments in the report of the Joint Select Committee, which was earlier approved by this House for incorporation into the bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2020. In accordance with Standing Order number 63, Madam Speaker, I will now seek the leave of this House for the bill to be withdrawn and for a new bill to be tabled, which will incorporate all the amendments in the approved report.
Members, you have heard the request of the Minister. Is it your wish that the bill before us be withdrawn and a new bill tabled, incorporating the amendments recommended in the report, which we approved earlier? Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, I now ask for the recommittal of the item notices of motions given orally to enable me to table a bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2021.
Members, the question before us is that the item notices of motion given orally be committed to enable the Minister to table a bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2021. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the National Identification and Registration Act 2021. Madam Speaker, just briefly to indicate that the bill itself was a part of the report, but the actual short form will be tabled now, and also to remind members and the public at large that the bill and also the draft regulations can be obtained from the website nidsfacts.com. So we hope, Madam Speaker, once this is done, that the first week of the next sitting of the House, we will be able to debate and approve the Bill 2021. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, I also want to let you know that it will also be on the parliamentary website, so we can have a look at it from there. House Leader, Dr. Chan.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security, please. Okay.
Dr. Chan.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders, enabling me to take the motion, those of which I gave earlier.
The question before the House is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the motions, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Dr. Chang, you can go ahead.
Thank you. In all 5 years where a zone is currently imposed, as outlined in the preceding resolutions. Given the short-term reporting that is stipulated by the Act, the zones of special operations will likely expire during the period of parliamentary recess. As a result of this, today's request for extension is designed to ensure continuity of the significant work that is being done within the zones. Madam Speaker, the effectiveness of the zones of special operations is devoid of debate. The Clear Hold Bill principle that undergirds this measure has positively impacted the lives of the residents of these communities. By any measure, the zones of special operations have been successful as a tool for restoring order, reducing criminal violence and reprisals, and creating a safe environment for social and infrastructure development. So, Speaker, this has been repeated several times, but Madam Speaker, I find it useful because I had the opportunity very recently of addressing a public civic body, and it's like they're hearing the word clear, hold and build for the first time. The government will continue to utilize the appropriate tools and implement necessary policies and programs to ensure the safety, security and well-being of the people of Jamaica. We will not compromise, waiver or negotiate on this matter. This government condemns all acts of criminal violence, whether it be inter-gang conflict, intimate partner violence, or domestic-related violence. They'll be met with the full force of the law. At this stage, Madam Speaker, I wish to take a brief comment on the very heinous and cowardly attacks on our children. In the communities, our children are being coerced by gangs from an early age, and in places where they should be protected at home and in church, they are being traumatized, assaulted, and victimized. The government has been explicit. The Prime Minister in particular have been very clear that we have a zero-tolerance approach for all forms of violence, whether it be criminal or otherwise, but the attacks on our children are particularly abhorrent. I'm encouraged by work being done, which clearly demonstrates that abuse, nutrition, and general stress of our infants, in fact, contribute to a violent adult. And in fact, as the Prime Minister have indicated, and the government looks at its own investment program, social investment program, will look more to how we engage not only those who have gone astray in their teens or out of school in terms of truancy, but we have to seek to find the families at a very early age, the single parents living in extremely difficult conditions in various communities, the little ones who are left without care and are exposed to stress, as well, emotional stress as well as physical stress and trauma at an early stage. Current medical advice suggests and research, which continues, and I'd like to be confirmed by some work being done by colleagues in our country, that the age from 0 to 2 years is crucial in this personality as it evolves for most people. And as indicated in an earlier presentation by the Prime Minister, we see this country which continues to have culture of violence from an early stage, a very high rate of homicides. Madam Speaker, Jamaica is one of the most robust constitutions, and a Charter of Rights that guarantees the preservation of the rights of our people. However, rights must be countermeasured with responsibility and the obligation to not infringe on the rights of others. What I gather some of my legal friends refer to as lateral responsibility. As a government, we will continue to pursue the necessary strategic investments, legislative amendments, and the social development to improve citizen security and public safety. We'll do this while being mindful of citizens' rights and of their responsibilities, thereby preserving and enhancing the quality of life for all Jamaicans and creating new foundations for long-term prosperity and peace. Critical aspect of the strategy, of course, being employed by the government to achieve sustainable community development is the utilization of a data-driven process that is accompanied by routine systemic reviews. In essence, social intervention must be based on evidence and must be data-driven in order to ensure we can not only monitor but establish clear outcomes to ensure that we can have transformative effect by the investment we have. It's unfortunate that recent research demonstrates, as I've said before, this country spends significant amount of funds on social investment. If we combine education with what will be considered the other social intervention programs, over a 10-year period we have spent well over $1.2 billion. The outcome is not what we had expected, what we would have wanted. Impact has been very limited. This process is informed by inputs from the Joint Force, Jamaica Defence Force, Jamaica Conservative Force, and the Social Intervention Committee, supported by data that is collected in collaboration with the PIOJ, Planning Institute of Jamaica, and the Crime Prevention Unit of the Ministry of National Security, guides the recommendation for further extension to build on the gains of the early clear policy. Members will recall that the designation of a ZOSA is based on the criminal data and recommendation of the Chief of Defence Staff and the Commissioner of Police. In order to pursue the build phase effectively, accurate socio-demographic data is being acquired and the entire population of the zone, this is the identified requirement as we move into a new era after well over a year of operation of the zones of special operation. This will facilitate the kind of monitoring I alluded to earlier, establishing timelines and deliverables and measuring outcomes in order to ensure that an impactful and successful social investment program is effected in all these communities. As this current extension draws close to its expiration, we continue to engage in this process of review and assessment of the zones. The approach reaffirms that the community is the heart of the Jamaican society. The concept and implementation of zones have demonstrated that enhanced security measures can effectively deliver community safety and security while setting the conditions for development. There is no question today that this is being achieved, Madam Speaker. It has been recommended, therefore, that the zone of special operations in the communities of Mount Salem, Denham Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, and now will be extended for a further period of 60 days. Madam Speaker, the zones of special operations are essentially a tool for development and transformation. The government has implemented a three-tiered, clear hold and build approach to community transformation through strategic investment and coordinated intervention within. Within this context, the build phase continues to take premises from Denham Town and Mount Salem. Greenwich Town and August Town have now transferred to the hold phase while developing the build phase, where now it is at the clear phase. Certainly in the Mount Salem in particular, which was one of the earliest declared, we have seen the major transformative effect. Work is in the build phase to continue in Denham Town, but I think only last week when we had the privilege of opening a new police station in Mount Salem, we could see the impact on the community and sense it from the community. The police station itself is a symbol of new thinking, and those who have been maybe a bit critical of our approach to security development and police transformation, take a look at the Mount Salem police station. It's a community police station. I will not seek to describe it, but we'll have in there support for domestic violence mitigation center, SISOCA, and other service facilities in the police force. But the actual design, structure, and layout demonstrate the kind of police work facility, a modern working office that is required for our professionals who do law enforcement work. Madam Speaker, with respect to operational outcomes as well as the accountability procedures of the members of the Joint Force in accordance with Section 9 of the Act, the Joint Command have continued to provide the 10-day reports for the activities of the zones. The ministry paper has been laid. I must further underscore that the level of professionalism, however, I must underscore, the level of professionalism displayed by the Joint Forces in all these areas is outstanding and welcome. There has been significant reduction in criminal activities across all 5 zones. I wish to assure the residents that the Joint Forces, which comprises members of the Jamaica Defence Force, the Jamaica Conservative Force, will continue to provide the necessary support to rid the communities of violent producers, gangs, illegal weapons and ammunition, contraband, as we build these communities. Madam Speaker, the replication of the clear hold and build policy will have implications for all challenged communities. Our social investment activities have been restructured to ensure accountability and inclusion. We are giving particular emphasis to the utilization of social demographic data in order to achieve meaningful, sustainable, and successful community development. The details of the work that is being done within the zones are available in the ministry papers, which have been distributed to all members, but I expect that we will take the opportunity to visit a number of them and see what is happening. We're at a stage where, certainly in Mount Salem, and we're seeing increasing improvements in the Denham Town section and other communities that we operate. Madam Speaker, we seek the affirmation of the House of the 5 resolutions laid. Acting on advice of the National Security Council in accordance with the law, reforms those of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, and in accordance with Section 5 of the Act, which stipulates that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with the Joint Command made by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the period referred to in Section 4.3. The Denham Town, Mount Salem, Greenwich Town, August Town, and Norwood zones of special operations, special security, and Community Development Measures Act to be extended for a further period of 60 days.
Madam Speaker, this has become a somewhat routine exercise where every 60 days or so we have to debate these resolutions renewing these orders. I know that the legislation has gone through a process of review, and I look forward to whatever amendments may be forthcoming, which will hopefully make it less burdensome on the Parliament to go through this at 60-day intervals, because it's quite clear that the intention of the government is that these ZOZOs, once put in place, will last for extended periods of time. We've had I think the Denham Town one and Mount Salem one going on since 2017, is it? For quite a long time now. And of course, the others that have been named subsequently, they're not that many. Augustown, Greenwich, parts of Greenwich Town, now Norwood, I think. Each one of those is continuing, Norwood being the most recent. So we are not in any way seeking to oppose the renewal of these orders. We've been consistently supportive of the need to extend them, because the ZOZO legislation provides an environment in which the security forces commit additional resources to a community within a legal framework. The committing of resources to communities is not dependent on there being any special legislation to do that. That is an operational decision, but at least with the ZOZO being in place, it brings with it a commitment on the part of the security forces to provide those resources. There are issues, of course, in how it's administered. Sometimes when officers are stationed in a ZOZO community for a protracted period of time, they build relationships on the ground that can impact their operational decision-making, and that can be a matter of concern for residents. When I toured Mount Salem, that was a concern that was voiced to me by persons on the ground. The whole question of where the soldiers or police are stationed is very important, because the nature of these communities is that what is happening at a checkpoint may be peace and safety, whereas what is happening 100 yards away may be sudden destruction. And the need for mobility and covering the critical areas which are strategically vulnerable was another area of concern. But the bigger point really, Madam Speaker, is the fact that Jamaica has many communities that would qualify for a ZOZO based on the criteria in the Act, which is essentially that law and order is under serious threat. And there are many communities in Kingston where there are ongoing conflicts on the ground, and people are being killed on a regular basis. The security forces are trying, but it seems that they don't have the resources to bring forth an adequate response. And so the residents are insecure, they're afraid, some of them move out if they can, and the situation is not being managed or responded to in any meaningful way by the government. I don't know whether it's because we've set the bar with the ZOZO so high in terms of the commitment of resources that we can't use it as an effective tool in all of the areas which need a greater concentration of security resources. I mean, when one reads the reports, one isn't struck with there being a massive amount of expenditure. A lot of the things that are going on are things like ensuring people have birth certificates, and other things that are fairly standard things to be done by members of parliament if they have adequate resources to do them. The zinc fence removal process, which JSIF has pioneered, seems to have a particular, the Zozo communities seem to benefit from that. Other communities would love to have that, but maybe the resources aren't there to do it. But overall, the key thing really is security, because the state has an obligation to protect the lives of its citizens and to ensure peace and safety, law and order in communities. And we haven't got anywhere near that in Jamaica. You know, the murder rate is higher than ever, it seems, higher this year than last year. And the Zozo mechanism, which we're hoping will bring some kind of long-term crime reduction in the few communities where it has been deployed, is not really making a big difference on a national scale. And we need something to make a difference on a national scale, because 5 or 6 communities, whatever it is not impacting the overall numbers. And there are many, many other communities that have situations which are just as bad or worse than the communities which are now subject to the Zozos. But they do not have the concentration of security assets to ensure peace and safety in those communities. And it is a problem. We don't know the criteria that is employed in deciding whether to put a Zozo in or not. For example, we know Central Kingston has been going through a major crisis of security. There have been demonstrations on a regular basis by women from the community and their political representatives. There have been letters written to the Prime Minister and others, but there's been no Zozo there. But one was put into Norwood sort of out of the blue. So we don't know what the calculation is that leads to those decisions. That's not a transparent process. The law does require, I believe, the advice of the Chief of Defense Staff and Commissioner of Police, and requires that the situation must be one in which there is a breakdown of law and order and serious risk to life and limb. But that, as I've said already, applies in many, many parts of Jamaica currently. So we don't know on what basis the choices are made. This year, I don't know how many Zosas have been declared this year. And Norwood, I'm not sure if Augustown was this year or last year, but they're few and far between. And when they are chosen, it begs the question, why community A rather than B, C, D, or E? And I don't think that's a satisfactory way of approaching this, because lives are at stake, and people need to understand how these decisions are being made and why particular communities are favored over others in these decisions. Especially, as I said, where we have a situation where so many communities need the kind of concentration of security effort supported by the social interaction and investment that is hopefully going to make a long-term difference, and that remains to be seen. So I think that it's not a strategy which I could say is a success. I would say it's a strategy which is inadequate. We welcome it because it provides succor, it provides respite to a few areas in the country, which we are grateful for them and happy for them, but there are so many others which don't have that benefit, and where the citizens remain terrified, insecurity abounds, murders are all too prevalent, and the security forces are just not being given the resources to tackle the issues that confront them on a daily basis. So I'd urge the government to rethink this. We've been hearing about enhanced security measures legislation. I've been hearing about it for a very long time, Minister. I attended one meeting with the Attorney General and the Shadow Spokesman for Justice well over a year, I think 2 years ago, to discuss aspects of policy around enhanced security measures. We had the review of the anti-gang legislation. Some issues around how to deal with enhanced security measures were discussed there. It just seems to take so long to bring legislation which is critical strategic legislation to help handle or manage the most serious problem confronting the country right now, even in the time of COVID. And the delays, it's unacceptable. I remember when the lot of scamming phenomenon reared its head. You know, we were able to develop and pass legislation within 6 months, which is still being used. I'm not saying that legislation is perfect, but it provided tools, legal tools, which were needed to tackle that specific problem. The opposition had nothing to do with it at the time. It was developed between the DPP's department, the Attorney General's department, the Legal Reform Department, the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of National Security. That is how that was developed. The opposition's role was when it came here and they didn't oppose it, and we thank them for that. Wow. But what I'm complaining about is it's not coming here. Yeah, the process. It's clogged up, and major important things that need to be addressed are not being addressed by the government. It's great to have NIDS on its way and other things that we see or hear about, but this issue of protecting the nation from the effects of violent crime and giving law enforcement lawful tools that will enable them to be more effective must be the biggest priority of the era. So I don't know why it's taking so long, Minister Chang, but I know it's not entirely your fault by any means, but the management of the legislative process is important. It has to be managed in a hands-on way by the Attorney General or the Minister of Justice. Unless that happens, it drifts. And it can't allow critical strategic pieces of legislation to drift. That is poor government and mismanagement of the affairs of the country. So I urge you to step on that particular pedal and press it. And press it as hard as you can so we can get that legislation here and we can debate it. If it's far-reaching, it may have to go to a joint select committee. But if it does, that process, I'm sure, can be managed efficiently so that it goes through that rigorous review quickly and becomes law. So, Minister, we support the ZOZOs. We will vote in support of this routine extension. But it is an inadequate measure. It doesn't have the national impact that is needed, and much more needs to be done by the government on this matter. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'll be very short because it really is just a matter of, again, remaining consistent and on the record. The fact is that I have been saying, and the Minister and I have had these discussions from time to time, which is that even as the ZOZO seeks to mobilize resources, and we are told that the ZOZO, the costs are significant and therefore they have to be few and far between. But we have agreed, and the Minister has said here in this House, that there are other measures that are lesser measures that can focus on specific aspects of the problems in particular community. And yet, even as we continue to engage in the discussion, we're not able to move anything. So today, even as I sat here, I got a call that 3 people were killed in Riverton again. And that's just almost an everyday occurrence. Yeah, 3 persons were shot. But they had a gunfight with the police, I'm told. So, but I'm saying that is just symptomatic of the problems in the community. So, I'm saying it is, Minister, that I don't think we have to wait until the situation explodes, and then we have now to respond. There are clear signs that there are growing tensions and stresses in community, and we ought to be able to act short of a ZOZO with specific measures. And I've sought that. I've time and again, when these ZOZOs come up for renewal, indicate that we are never going to oppose a ZOZO. The fact, though, is that there are communities that are undergoing stresses similar, and they ought to, and even specific measures that are lesser than ZOZO can be addressed. You have agreed with me in principle, but we have seen nothing. So, Minister, I'd like that again. I come back to it. There are things that needs to be done. In the case of Riverton, for example, the electrification, the issue of just helping to electrify, to wire houses so that they can get the electrification. Minister, the minister responsible knows. The minister responsible knows that I was the first to write to the PS requesting assistance in that regard in Riverton. I was the first, and it has not yet been seen. I've spoken to the minister about it. He knows that I've spoken to him about it, and yet nothing has happened. And we continue to temporize, and these things continue to get worse. So, Minister, I think that more can be done, even short of ZOZO. More can be done to assist and to allay some of those concerns in these communities, even if the ZOZO resources are not there. More can be done, and I think we need to act now while we can, rather than wait until there's an explosion.
Madam Speaker, I know this has become routine, but I think we have reached an important juncture. And because I have been serving on the ZOZO committee over the last number of months, I have begun to better appreciate some of the wide-ranging issues that affect our situation in relation to crime and violence. We spent, Minister, under your able chairmanship, an inordinate amount of time looking at both the coercive action of the state to combat crime and violence, but very importantly, we have gone into so much detail and assessment on the social side of the equation, and I think we are coming to the resolution that there might be the need for greater focus and effort on the social side. And I don't want to preempt the work of the committee, but I know that we are working on a time frame to achieve a report back here, because the aim is to do a complete revision of the ZOZO Act. But my only fear, Minister, is that it might lead to your own frustration, because having done such tremendous work, focused on the new areas that we need to drive, there might not be the resources. But my intervention is going to be brief, because the Minister and I, we have been working closely in relation to some of the issues that I myself face in the Eastern Division. And I don't want to reveal secrets, but it is clear that we are going to need a lot more support, especially internationally, in relation to the combating of crime and violence. Madam Speaker, I don't know where so many guns come from. I don't know where so much shots come from. Well, I do know. It is not here. It is from overseas, and it is funded from overseas. And I believe, Minister, at this stage, it might be useful for international partners to really assist us more. And I tell people overseas that you can help your community by sending a sewing machine to the girls on the street to assist them by sending a block making machine to help the so-called idle youth. Don't send them no gun. Don't send them no ammunition. And it is a national effort when my colleague from Eastern St. Andrew calls in distress, and you hear it also in my voice. We know that it's a common problem, and we don't want to see young people, poor people killing each other, and that is what is happening. And I really believe that our international partners can assist us more in stemming the flow of guns and ammunition into our country, and we could live to see a better day as a result. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, first I may thank my colleagues for the support extended, but without taking too much of your time, I'll comment on a few of the points raised. The Zones of Special Operation Review legislation the report should be ready after one more session, which I think takes place later this week. We have come along when we have worked together on it, and I think much effort has been put in there, and we should have some valuable amendments, but also develop a much better understanding of the challenge we face in this particular area. Put in context, Madam Speaker, I think the government is fully aware of the challenges faced by many communities. In fact, one would like to go back that as far back as 2009, when the first report was done to look at the difficult communities where crime, violence, and a lifestyle that was, characterized by essentially the dysfunctional activity was identified, and the Planning Institute was given the response to look at where these are located and what are the challenges in these communities. And some 100 communities are identified in 5 parishes, and it essentially remains almost the same, unfortunately, despite of some significant amount of expenditure in the area of social intervention that took place over the 10-year period. We're still working with, we have in fact we've looked at the data and continue to review it and identify the communities. So we are aware that there's a large number of communities in need of special attention. In fact, the zone, the KMR region, of course, is dominant, which incorporates the corporate area, St. Catherine, Clarendon, and what we might call the Western Triad of St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. There's detailed knowledge. The fact is that at the time it was designed to have a comprehensive approach on the CRP program. That program got somewhat deviated and was replaced by selective small interventions, which did not work despite of pretty heavy capital expenditure. The government has taken a position indicated that we are going to move back to systemic operation in these areas, but the fact is we have a clear and present danger, and that is to seek to not only to save lives and control a number of communities which have gone extreme. Indeed, all these communities which are selected are based on recommendation from the chiefs of the commissioner and the chief of staff, and I could say the picture I get from it that these communities are like the axis of certain activity, and therefore when you impact on them, you impact on the surrounding communities fairly easily. It doesn't mean the other communities don't need intervention and do not need support, and certainly we have been using some standard operating practice fairly regularly now, which has been helping to stabilize the areas. The reality is, of course, we have to face is that when gangs start fighting, given we have society, before you apprehend and lock them up with criminal law, they have to commit a crime. And when 2 gangs start fight, you're getting 4 or 5. In fact, I would say historically, in certain sections of Montego Bay, the historical thing is 30 to 40 homicides out of a gang war over a period of 6 months. Was almost the norm. What has been happening recently, despite of what look like numbers, that 2 things are happening, Madam Speaker, is that the police, with increased intelligence, have been apprehending a lot of gang leaders. most of them arrested and charged and prosecuted. Some, of course, have engaged the police in combat and have been shot. Others have been shot by their partners. By contesting gangs. Now, one of the results of that is that the second and third line members of the gang, because a gang don't have all killers. A gang of 20 or 30 may have 2 or 3 really serious killers. But once you remove that set, if the gang continues, another set springs up and seek to rise and achieve leadership. And that means 4 or 5 people, not only between communities, but within the gang start fighting. And there's an increase in homicide. And that, in fact, is the inevitable results of increased police activity, which has been demonstrated not only here, as we are seeing now, but in all areas, urban centers where we have had significant crime increases. That kind of activity happens, where gangs are the basis of the criminal activity. It is what drives the 2+1. We have to keep the pressure up so we can keep removing the killers from the street. Secondly, this is the whole drive to systematize, that is, to ensure that our primary government agencies begin to provide space for training and taking off the streets the individual, engaging those individuals who are like to be recruited by gangs. So we have 2-pronged attack. In the short term, we just have to find a way to engage them. Those who should be in school, get them in school. Those who are not, are out of school age group, in the 15 to 25 in particular, should get involved in some training program. And the government has sought to expand that program. Clearly, this year we have had a bit of reduction, well, tightening up because of the budget. We have had a pandemic, and this is another long-standing epidemic. We continue the program, but we have not been able to expand as rapidly. And therefore, we have, but we are committed to continuing, and we are doing the programs. The idea is to ensure that we can intercept and engage our young males in particular at all levels. And this is the instruction, and the Prime Minister will in fact expand that as he takes on a wider for that aspect of it, because it has to be a national program that we can engage all our young males and assure the country we're engaging them positively, especially in that 15 to 25 age group. In the short term. In the long term, we have to look at all our young males from infancy, from birth, and look at the family situation to determine that we don't have the recruitable young people growing up. It will take some time. It's a shift in policy and the programs, and we have to go through the process of having professionals who serve in the field redirect their efforts. It's a new approach, and I expect by the time we get back into face-to-face school and expand our training in heart and other areas, we will see the impact coming out. But that's the direction we're moving in, and we are convinced and are sure we are moving in the right direction at this point in time. Madam Speaker, we are sensitive to what's happening, but our first measure is to stem the violence. We will have pushback, we'll have splintering of gangs, and therefore some increased activity, but the police is moving aggressively and in a very professional manner. Also mentioned the fact that we do need more police officers, and that the Commissioner recently used the term is not boots on the ground. It's not just a matter of getting someone, branding, give them special authority, put them in the community and get them out. We trained men, we have expanded training facilities, and we intend to achieve our target of 14,000 quickly. This year we should do just about over 1,000, which will bring additional men to the police, and we'll expand that program that in short order we'll achieve what is required while putting in place force multiplier activities that we can increase the efficiency and in fact expand our deployment in some of the critical areas. The cordon and curfew has been working. We have seen some short-term stability in central Kingston, but we know once you stabilize one area, other areas tend to pop up, and we have to keep being flexible and fleet-footed, so to speak. And the police have been responding and demonstrate the ability to bring areas under control and restore order, at least in the areas. So, Madam Speaker, I will say that I'm convinced the government has identified and diagnosed the problem correctly. We are moving in the right direction. We have achieved success. Certainly zones are just one tool, one aspect of what we're doing. And as the opposition said, it is not our intention to dilute the ZOZO, but we will expand. And I've identified in the carpet here what we call the Southern Crescent. I indicate to the country the wider area of the Kmart region to Clarendon, and of course our 3 western parishes. And there are pockets in other communities and other parishes which will get the attention of the government. But what we will not undertake is knee-jerk reaction to just jump in the area, do something aggressive overnight, and hope for that something happens. We have laid out a plan. We're going to carry it on. The legislation has been a little bit tedious in coming, but legislation, I've learned, dealing with criminal activity affects individual rights and constitutional issues, and are therefore more time-consuming in developing and ensuring that they get them right and we don't end up in any challenges. But, Madam Speaker, once again, let me thank my colleagues for the support given and ask for, in the extension of the zones of special operation, the 5 communities names as we continue to bring some level of order and peace to these communities while continuing to fight across the country against criminal activity and the culture of violence that beset our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. The question before the House is that for the approval of the extension of zones of special operations in the 5 areas brought in the motions today. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. All 5 motions have been approved.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for today. I therefore ask that the House be adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, July 21 at 2 p.m.
The question before the House is that it now be stand adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, the 21st of July, 2021 at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Jamaica, have you voted for your favorite festival song for this year? You have until this Thursday, July 22, to decide which of the 12 finalists will win the grand prize of a whopping $3 million. And your votes will decide. So join us on PBCJ this Thursday, July 22 at 8:30 p.m. for the Jamaica Festival Song 2021 Results Show. It's festival time again. You don't want to miss this one.
Vast, majestic, impressive and beautiful. People say here that when God created the South Tyrol, he must have had an especially good and creative day. The north of Italy attracts everybody with its diversity. A spectacle of mountain pastures, snow-covered rock formations and colourful meadows full of flowers. More light, more freedom and more horizons than anywhere else. That's the sunny side of the Alps. The South Tyrol is a place where harsh mountain life encounters the dolce vita. People on the farms and mountain pastures live traditionally here. However, modern life has reached here too. This creates the mixed appeal of the South Tyrol. If you don't enjoy hiking, there is a range of other attractive free time activities here. For example, golf. There is the Lana Golf Club near Meran, lying in a particularly beautiful place. Greens and bunkers are embedded among lush vineyards. If you want some more practice, or if you are a professional handling the woods and irons, you may not actually play better here in this impressive landscape, but at least you have the beautiful views.